So years ago, I was working with really one of my first coaches, and he said something interesting to me, which was, I think I had gotten upset about something in my personal life, and he said, he said, anytime uh, there's an upset, or anytime you get upset or angry, there's an unmet expectation. So I thought that was really interesting. And sure enough, in that particular example, when I really thought about it, there was something that I was holding as an expectation. And since that wasn't happening, I was getting upset. And so for me, this is really fascinating. Almost any time that I notice myself getting upset, I can pause, and sure enough, I'll find that there's an expectation there. Now, what we do with that, can be many things. At times, uh, I'll look at the expectation that I'm holding, and I may realize, you know what, I don't need or want to hold this as an expectation anymore. And the moment I let go of the expectation, very often I can let go of the upset as well. Now, there's certain expectations that are important to us, or you could look at them as a particular standard for your life. And with those, certainly you might want to keep it. Now, whether or not you want to get upset when it's not met is a different choice, essentially. I mean, for example, if you have a particular standard for something and it's constantly not being met, at a certain point, it's probably a waste of time to keep getting upset versus doing something about it. But for me, what's incredibly freeing about this is having something that I can notice now. One of the founders of NLP, Richard Bandler, used to say, disappointment takes adequate planning. And if you think about it, you have to go through a particular setup if you're going to get upset, for the most part. You have to have something and hold it as an expectation, and then have somebody come and not meet it, and then you get to be upset. But now, I think for myself, I like to notice examples where it happens a lot or with some great consistency, and then see if there's an adjustment that I want to make to my expectation. And also, you can look at the difference in your experience of having something as an expectation versus having it as a goal or a hope, something that you'd like to have happen. So for me, if I expect something to happen and it doesn't happen, then I'm likely to be upset. I may not be angry, but I might be sad, disappointed. But if I have it as a hope or a goal and it doesn't happen, for me, emotionally, it hits me in a much lighter way. So that's another thing that you can sort of look at when you're holding an expectation. You can decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to have this as an aspiration or as a goal, but not necessarily as something that I'm expecting or demanding or holding as a standard. I remember going to a restaurant with my father, and he started getting very, very upset. And what I realized, or what I can realize now looking back on that, is he was upset because he expected the waiters and waitresses to behave in a particular way, to attend to him in a particular way. And for whatever reason that day, it was very busy. They were very distracted. And he wasn't getting what he expected. And then he got very, very, very upset in relation to that. So I think that's also sort of a second half to it. Like, even if you notice you have an expectation, you can begin to decide, how do I want to respond to that in an ongoing way? Even if I'm expecting it, maybe, I hold it as an expectation or a standard, but instead of getting upset, I might decide, you know what, I'm not going to go to this place anymore. I'm going to go somewhere else. So that's a different way of responding, even though you're holding it as an expectation. And another way that I think about this is another opportunity for sort of a mindful observation. And for me, it's a very interesting one, because it's something that now you can notice in the moment when it's happening. In the moment when you get upset in some way, you can pause and begin to get curious. Okay, what's the expectation that I'm holding underneath this? And is that something that I want to continue to hold as an expectation or a standard? Or perhaps, what would it be like if I shifted it to a goal or something that I want? Or if I let go of it altogether? It's interesting. I think some expectations are tied to culture. So there might be an expectation that people behave in a certain way in a certain context. And if you're holding that as an expectation, when you move into a new culture, you're certainly just going to be very disappointed. I'll give you an example. Here in the States, very often it's sort of culturally expected that you'll open a door for someone and let the other person walk first. And especially in terms of gender, typically a man will open the door and a woman will go first. The first time I went to Japan, I was really surprised, because men go first in an entrance. At least that's what I observed. And if I'm wrong, I hope somebody points it out in the comments. In any case, for me, that's a curious thing, and I could get upset about that, and I can make up a story about, oh, wow, they're putting men first, or this or that. I'm actually not looking at that, but basically, it's an opportunity to notice, okay, there's a different standard or expectation culturally here. So at least while I'm there, I'm going to drop my expectation for the moment, and as they say, when in Rome, do it a different way. Another example between the U.S. and Japan is, here when we eat pasta, at least I was taught by my parents, like, don't make a lot of noise, don't slurp and things like that. Whereas in Japan, it's totally fine to do that, and actually it's a sign that you're enjoying your meal. It was very interesting. So I could be sitting in a restaurant in Japan and get offended or feel bad towards somebody who's making noise when they're eating their noodles. Or I can just notice, you know what, this is the cultural norm here. So that's a bit about expectations, and hopefully some ways that you can begin to explore and really just loosen any sort of rigid holding of an expectation, so you can decide, is this something that I still want to keep and embrace, or is it something that I want to let go of?